I will show you how to create crops and grow them using the day and night cycle. As each day passes, the crop will grow and then you'll be able to harvest them. So let's begin by creating our first crop scene. So go to Scene, New Scene, and add a 2D scene. Then rename this to Corn. Then add a child and search for Sprite 2D. Then head over to our Assets folder, and in the Game and Objects folder, we want the basic plant. So we just double click that and we're going to use these crop assets here. So back on Sprite 2D, just drag the basic plant into here and then just zoom in onto our sprite. And then for horizontal frames, set 6, and for vertical frames, set 2. Then for frame, just increment this value to 1. Then head over to the Scenes and Components folder and grab the Hurt component and just drag that onto our corn scene. Then for the option on the tool, choose Water Crops. Then add a child node and search for Collision Shape 2D. In the shape, choose Rectangle Shape, and then we'll zoom in on the sprite and just make an adjustment on here, and that will set the collision area. So we are using the Hurt component to receive the hit from the player's tool, and by setting the Water Crops tool, when the player goes to water the crop, we can receive that event and then start to process the growth cycle. So back on corn, say add child and search for GPU particles 2D and rename this to watering particles. I'll just move the particles to here, and in the inspector, under process material, let's create a new particle process material. Then open the material, then scroll down to angle, and for the minimum value, choose -180 and then the max value 180. Then for angular velocity, choose -300 for the minimum value, and then for the maximum value, 300. Then for orbital velocity, we'll have -1 and 1. And in accelerations, let's have -10 on the y-axis so that the particles are moving upwards. And then we've added some angular velocity so that the particles turn and spin. Then scroll down to colour and let's just modify this. And just choose blue colour just for the water. Then scroll back up to the process material particle. Let's just close that. And then in the amount property, let's increase that to 16. Then click on the sprite and let's just move the position of this sprite. So scroll down to transform position. And on the y-axis, let's just increase that and position that here. And then do the same for the Hurt component. So we'll just go back to transform position Y and just move that as well. So now save the scene and go to the Scenes folder, Objects, Plants, and save the scene as corn. Then click the watering particles and drag that into the Scenes, Objects and Plants folder and save the watering particles as a component in there. Then just delete it from the scene and then just re-add that. And then just save the scene again. Then go to corn again, add child node and search for GPU particles and then create another particles child node. Then rename this node to flowering particles and then just drag that above the Hurt component. And to view the particles better, just turn off the Hurt component for now, just so we can see the colours a little bit better. Then click on flowering particles. And then in process material, let's create a new material and choose new process material here. And then just open that. Let's also just turn off the watering particles. So we're just focusing now on our flowering particles. Then scroll down to angular velocity and choose -180 by 180. Orbital velocity is -1 and 1. In gravity for the Y, choose -100. And for colour, we'll just keep this white for now. Let's just scroll up and just collapse the particle process material. And in lifetime, change this to 0.6. We just move this into a better position for viewing. And speed scale will change to 0.4. explosiveness to 0.5, and randomness to 0.5. Then reduce the amount of particles to 6. Now that we've finished the flowering particles, let's also just drag that into our scenes, objects and plants folder, and then save the scene in there. Just delete the flowering particles from the scene, and then just drag it back on to the corn scene and just reposition it. Now we can turn back on the watering particles and the hurt component. Now let's create a test scene for our crops. Go to Scene and Test folder and make a copy of the test scene day and night cycle. So let's just duplicate that and we'll call it Test Scene Crops and just duplicate. Then open the scene and the day and night cycle component, let's just disable that for now. Zoom in on the scene and then go to Objects and Plants and just drag the corn item onto our scene. Then let's just run the current scene and that just tests our scene item there. So we can just close that. Then head back to corn and we'll create a growth cycle component which will manage transitioning the sprite and manage the growth of the crop. So we'll go Scene, New Scene, Other Node and just choose Node and Create and just rename this to Growth Cycle Component and then save the growth cycle component into the Objects and Plants folder. Then let's attach a script and you can save that also in that folder too. And in the growth cycle script, type class name, growth cycle component, add an export variable for our current growth state, which will be a new data type. So let's create that data type first. So head over to Scripts and Globals and then just open the data type script. And in this script, let's create a new enum called growth state. The first enum is seed, then germination, vegetative, reproduction, maturity, and harvesting. Now the reason why I've chosen these enums is if we go back to the objects folder in the asset and just open the basic plants, if we just scroll in on the asset, each enumeration will match the sprite frame. So we've got seed, germination, vegetative, reproduction, maturity, and then the harvest at the end. Now let's head back over to the growth cycle component, and inside the script we can now say current growth state is of type data types dot growth states equals data types dot growth states, and then we'll use seed as the default value. For the next parameter, use export range with a value of between 5 and 365 for the days, and use variable days until harvest and use a default value of 7. Then we'll create some signals. So we'll have a signal for crop maturity and a signal for crop harvesting. Then some more parameters. So for is watered, which is a type bool, a variable for starting day type int, and another for current day, which is also type int. Then let's override the ready function and let's get the day and night cycle manager and then get the signal time tick day and then connect that signal. Let's create another function called onTime tick day, passing the day and return void, and then say if is watered, then if our starting day is equal to 0, and set the starting day to the day that's being passed by the signal. Then let's create another function and call this growth state and pass in the starting day, which is an int, and current day, which is also an int, if current growth state equals our data types dot growth states dot maturity, then return. So what we're doing here is when the growth states are being traversed, once we get to the maturity state, we just want to come back out of this method. Then variable number of states, and just set this to 5. Then variable growth days passed equals current day minus the starting day modulus number of states. So if we go back to the data types, the number of states are these. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Go back to growth cycle component script, then create another variable state index and say growth days past modulus number of states plus 1. Then set current growth state equals the state index. So the current growth state is of type data types growth state, and the index value will set that enum value. Then let's get the current growth state from the data types keys and just print that as a debug statement. And we can say current growth state is name, and then state index, and pass in that state index as well. Then say if current growth state equals data types growth states and maturity, then call the crop maturity signal and emit that. That completes the growth states function. So just scroll back up to on time tick day, and let's just add this method, and then just pass in starting day and day. Then let's scroll back down and add another method, and we'll call this function harvest state. And then just pass in again the starting day and current day. So we'll just do that. And then say if current growth state equals data types, growth states and harvesting, then return from this method. And say var days past equals current day minus the starting day and modulus days until harvest, which we've defined in our export range. Then say if days past equals days until harvest minus 1, then current growth state equals data types dot growth states dot harvesting. Then we can call the cropped harvesting signal and emit that. Then we can go back to the on time tick day method, and after the growth state method, just call the harvest state method and pass in starting day and day. Let's scroll back down. We've got one more method to complete. So create a new function called get current growth state, but return from this function a growth state from the data type. So we will return the current growth state, and this is what we set in our growth state method. So that completes the growth cycle component script. And then head back over to the corn scene, and in the scene objects and plants folder, just add the growth cycle component to this scene. And I'll just position that above the hurt component. Now click on the corn scene, right click and attach a script, and we'll keep it named as corn and just create that in the objects and plants folder. And the first variable will be var corn harvest scene equals, and then preload the corn harvest scene here. And we've created this corn harvest scene as a collectible in a previous tutorial. Then select Sprite 2D and just drag that into our script, and then hold Control to create the onReady variable. And do the same for watering particles, flowering particles, the growth cycle component, and our hurt component. Then create another variable called growth state, which is type growth state, and then just set the default value to be growth states and seed. Then override the ready function, and then just say watering particles emitting equals false, flowering particles emitting also equals false. Then grab the hurt component and then connect the hurt signal. So create the function on hurt, and inside that method we can say if not growth cycle component is watered, then watering particles emitting equals true. Then use an await and call getTree, create a timer of 5 seconds, and then just register that timeout signal. Then after the timer has elapsed, we just want to then set the particles back to false to stop emitting. And then for the growth cycle component, just set is watered equals true. Then back in the ready method, get the growth cycle component, and for crop maturity, connect that signal and create a function called onCropMaturity. So after the hurt method, we can say onCropMaturity, get the flowering particles, and just set emitting to true. And this will just activate those particles to show that the maturity has happened in the growth cycle. Then just scroll up, and after the ready method, let's override the process method. And let's get the growth state and grab the growth cycle component and get the current growth state from that component. Then get our sprite 2D and set the frame to be the growth state. Then say if growth state equals data types dot growth states dot maturity. Then grab our flowering particles and set emitting to true. So now that we have completed the corn script, I would just explain a little how the corn script and the growth cycle component work together. So as you can see, in the ready method, we are registering to the hurt component signal and the growth cycles component signal. When the player is using the watering can and approaches the crop, as they water the crop, the hurt component will first be called. In the onHurt component, we then tell the growth cycle that the crop is currently watered, and then we emit watering particles so we can show the player that the crop has been activated. Then in the growth cycle component, the day and night cycle manager will always constantly be communicating with the growth component to give it the current time of day. When the crop is watered, then the growth cycle component will start to go through the growth state. So until the crop has been watered, nothing will happen. And as you can see, we first go through the growth state, we calculate the growth days that have currently passed, and then set the state index, which we then get later to modify the frame on the sprite. So the growth states have been separated from the last state, which is the harvest state, because you can set a different number of days for the harvest state. Now the growth state is fixed because of the number of frames on the sprite. However, the harvest state can be several days later. So I've separated that to give a little bit of variation, because you may have crops with different harvest days. Then you get the current growth state here, and that just enables to update the frame. I've just noticed that the current growth state on default is set to seed. However, that should be the first frame, and we should really set that to germination. So just update that. Now let's test the scene again. But first go to debug settings and just turn visible collision shapes on, and then go to test scene, crops, and then 2D, and then just run this current scene. And just click the watering can and just use the left mouse button. So at the moment, this white collision shape is stationary. So let's use the axe, and we've only configured the hit part for the axe. So let's configure it for our watering can. So let's head over to the player scene. To go to scenes player, open up the player scene here, and then select the chopping state script and just scroll to the top. So we'll need to take the hit component collision shape. Let's copy this line here and then head to the watering script. And at the top, just paste that in. Then back to chopping and just take the ready function as well and back onto watering. Then scroll down and copy these lines here. Then back in the chopping script, in the onExit method, just copy that last line there. Now that we've completed the script, just select the watering state and assign the hit component collision shape. So just choose this option here and click OK. Then head over to test scene, select 2D and just run the current scene. Choose the watering can and then just hit with the left mouse button. And we can see now we've got that working. We've got down, up, right and left. And then let's go to the crop. And as you can see, that's now activated the water particles. Let's just stop that. Let's turn off the visible collision shapes. And then let's run the scene again. Turn on the watering can. And then let's water the crops. Now let's speed this up. So watering is now stopped. And we're now transitioning through the days. So we've gone to the next state. And as you can see in the output window, we've got the germination, vegetative, reproduction, and then the next state is maturity, and we're now showing the flowering particles. And now the crop is in harvest, so we can pick up that collectible. And as you can see, the inventory panel has now been updated and we've collected the corn. So just stop that. Now that we've finished the corn scene, let's just rename this scene here and call it test scene crops. Just save that. And now let's begin to do the same for our tomato scene. So go scene, a new 2D scene, and rename this to tomato, and then save that scene. And just save it under scenes, objects and plants. And now I'm going to do the exact same thing as I've done for corn. So I will speed up the development and then stop it at points where there will be slight differences. So once you've set the horizontal and vertical frames, just increase this until we get to the seeds for the tomato. Then set the water crops for the hurt component, and then add child and attach a collision shape. And now that we've got the correct frame here, just increment that 1 so we get the germination sprite. Then for collision shape, create a new rectangle collision and just reposition the sprite. Then click on the tomato node and attach a script. And just save that script in the objects and plants folder. Then head back over to the corn scene, open up the corn script, and then just copy everything from inside this script. Go back to the tomato script and paste that in. Then let's change the variable here to be tomato, and then choose the tomato harvest scene. Then scroll down and then change that, and then just write tomato here and just paste it over the instance. And that will complete the script for the tomato, so everything has been reused here. So I'm just going to head back over to the assets folder, and in the objects folder just open up that basic plant sprite. And the frames will go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. So we need to make a slight modification to the tomato script because the growth state will not start at 1, 2, 3 and 4. We need to add an offset for the tomato sprites. So in the tomato script, add another variable under the growth state and call this start tomato frame offset and set this to 6. And then after growth state in the process method, just add the offset and that will finish the script. Head back over to the test scene crops, and then in the plants folder, let's just drag the tomato onto our scene. Let's test the scene. Let's turn on the watering can and let's just speed the time up. First, I will water the corn and then I'll just wait for the first sprite to appear. And then let's water the tomatoes. And now we have the corn, let's collect that. And the inventory is updated. And then now let's collect the tomato. And the tomato is updated also in the inventory. Let's close that. So now that we've finished the corn and the tomato crop, there is one final thing to check because these are new scenes added to our game. We need to just check that Y sorting is correct and configured for these two new scenes. So we're not going to test this in this scene because this is just going to test the crops and the transition between the growth states. However, let's go back to our test scenes folder and let's just open the test scene tile map layer through Y sorting. And this is where we can test those scenes so that we're only testing Y sorting against all assets in the game. And this is one of the benefits of having test scenes, is that we are testing everything in isolation. So add a new child, search for node 2D and just create that. And just rename this to be crop. Then go to scenes, objects, plants folder and just add crop to our scene. So I've added the corn, and then I'm just going to nest that under the crops node. And then I'll add another one, and then let's add 2 tomato seeds as well. And this is as if we have just laid them out on top of the tilled dirt, and we're going to cover that in the next tutorial. However, let's just resolve any Y sorting issues. And also on the test scene tile map layer Y sort, go to the UI folder and just drag on the game screen. And then we can interact with the day and night cycle. Let's run the test scene. Let's choose the watering can and just water this crop here. And then let's just speed up the clock. Now let's just walk over the sprite. So as we go from the top down, we're just walking straight over the corn. So we do need to fix Y sorting on here. So I'll just stop the scene. So I'll head back over to the corn scene. And for corn, just scroll down and enable Y sort. Save that. Head back to the test scene tile map layer Y sort and just run that scene again. Let's just water the crop and then speed this up. And then let's see the effect of the player walking over the crop. So we still have an issue with Y sort. So just stop that and make sure the parent Y sort is already set for the scene. So just scroll down to that and then enable Y sort on here and run the test scene again. So water the crop, speed it up. Let's see the effect again on the player. And as you can see, Y sorting is now starting to work. Let's see what it's like here. And as you can see, when the sprite is in germination, it's slightly over the player. So we need to just make another adjustment on the player for Y sorting to fix this. We'll close that. So open the player scene. And if we just select animated sprite 2D, the position of the Y sort is here. And in the properties, there is no Y sort position, not like you have in the tile set. So if we just go back to the basic grass biome things in our tile set, and then just select the sunflower. If you look at rendering, there is a Y sort origin parameter. Now for sprites, this works slightly different. So on animated sprite 2D, the Y sort position is here. Let's just go to the inspector, and in the offset, let's make an adjustment. I'll zoom in a little bit more, and I'm going to adjust it so that it sits 3 pixels from the feet. Then in animated sprite 2D position, let's just reposition the sprite so that it sits back on the X axis. Let's head back to the test scene tile map layer Y sort and just run that scene. And then let's use the watering can and speed up the scene. And now let's just walk over the sprite so we can see that we've got an improvement there on our Y sort. And it's also better for the germination sprite as well. Let's just check our other sprites. So that's looking okay. And the flower and the mushrooms. So the adjustment to the player offset position on the animated sprite 2D has fixed that problem. So we just probably need to modify the small tree and the large tree. I'll make those adjustments and speed up the video. Close this. Then head back over to test scene tile map layer and just test this one more time. I'm now happy with the adjustments there on the large and small tree, and that's fixed Y sorting for our new crop assets. So this is a benefit of those test scenes. We've been able to make those adjustments across all the assets without affecting any other systems. Now that brings us to the end of this tutorial on how to grow crops using the day and night cycle. In the next tutorial, I will show you how to plant the crops on the tilled dirt tile map. If you like what you've seen in this tutorial, Please remember to hit like and subscribe to receive future updates of my other tutorials. Thank you for watching.